There's a certain kind of loneliness that only exists on a long, straight stretch of American highway at 3 in the morning. The world shrinks down to the twin beams of your headlights, the drone of the Cummins engine, and the crackle of the CB radio, which is usually just static and whispers. You're the captain of a 40-ton ship sailing on a sea of asphalt, and the only stars are the distant, cold lights of towns you'll never visit. For 20 years, that's been my world. I've seen things out there, believe me, things that make you check your coffee, check your mirrors, and pray for the sunrise. I've seen shapes in the fog that look too much like men standing still. I've seen deer with eyes that glowed the wrong color, and I've heard voices on the radio where no radio should be. But most of those are just road ghosts, tricks of a tired mind. You learn to shake them off. You have to. But this one's different. This one sticks. I first heard the story at a Petro truck stop outside of Joliet, Illinois. I was nursing a burnt cup of coffee at a place they call the Iron Skillet. It was one of those nights where the rain was coming down in sheets. I was sitting across from an old-timer. We called him Pops. He had a face like a worn-out road map, and hands so callous they looked like they were carved from oak. He'd been driving since before the interstates were even finished. He was staring into his cup like he was reading tea leaves when he said, "Real quiet, you ever run the 294 bypass north of O'Hare late at night?" I nodded. 100 times. Why? He took a slow sip. You see the boy. I must have given him a look because he chuckled. A dry, rattling sound. Oh, you'd know if you saw him. He ain't something you forget. And that's when he told me. He told me about a kid, a little boy, maybe 5 or 6 years old, on one of those old-fashioned tricycles, the red metal kind with the white plastic handles. He said the boy doesn't ride on the shoulder. He doesn't ride in a lane. He rides dead on the center line. That broken white stripe that separates the lanes of chaos. He just pedals along slow and steady like he's on his way to the park on a sunny afternoon. Not in the middle of a 10-lane interstate with semis blasting past him at 70 miles per hour. Everyone sees him, Pop said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Every rig, every four-wheeler, and everyone does the same thing. They just move over. No horn, no brakes, no fuss. You see him, you give him the road. It's like an unspoken rule, an instinct. What is he, a ghost? I asked, trying to sound skeptical. On the road, you hear a dozen ghost stories a week. Pops shook his head slowly, his eyes fixed on mine. No, he ain't a ghost. A ghost is something that's gone. This kid, he's a warning. He's a test. A test. What kind of test? He leaned in closer, the smell of stale coffee and menthol cigarettes hanging around him. The test is your patience, your nerve, the road. It makes you angry. It makes you impatient. And then you see this impossibility in your way. And your first thought is to lean on that air horn, to scare him off the road for his own good. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle in the noisy diner. Don't, he said, and the single word was colder than the November rain outside. Whatever you do, son, you never, ever hit that horn. You just move over, say a prayer if you're the praying kind, and you keep on driving. You pretend you never saw him. Why, I pressed. What happens if you honk? Pops drained his coffee cup and set it down with a heavy clink. He looked out the big window at the rain lashing against the glass, at the endless river of headlights flowing past. He stops pedaling, Pop said, his voice barely a whisper, and he turns his head to look at you. And you learn right in that second that some things in this world are better left alone. You learn that the worst thing you can do on that dark road is ask for a closer look. He got up then, threw a few crumpled bills on the table, and walked out without another word, leaving me alone with my cold coffee and a story that was already starting to crawl under my skin. I tried to laugh it off, but I couldn't shake the image of that little boy pedaling slowly down the dotted line in the dead of night. A few months passed. I'd all but forgotten Pop's story. I'd driven that stretch of I-94 a dozen times since then. It was just another piece of concrete. Then came a run in late April. A load of machine parts from Milwaukee down to Gary. I got delayed at the drop-off. By the time I was heading back north, it was well past midnight. The traffic had thinned out to almost nothing. The road was hypnotic. The rhythmic thump-thump of the tires lulling me into that semi-aware state. I was in the second lane from the right, just cruising, and then I saw it dot up ahead, maybe a quarter mile, a small shape. At first, I thought it was road debris, but as I got closer, the shape resolved itself. It wasn't debris, it was moving, slowly, and it was right on the line. My blood went cold. It was a tricycle, a small, dark, metallic red tricycle, and on it, a small figure, a child, hunched over the handlebars, pedaling with a steady, determined rhythm. My mind refused to process it. It was impossible. A kid out here, at 2 in the morning. My first thought was that he'd wandered from a house, a sleepwalking child, a tragedy waiting to happen. My hand flew to the cord for the air horn. My thumb was resting on the button. The warning from Pops echoed in my head. But this wasn't a ghost story anymore. This was a real kid in mortal danger. I had to do something. But I hesitated. Something held me back. It wasn't just Pop's story. It was the calmness of the scene. A car in the far left lane approached him. I watched as the car smoothly, silently drifted one lane over to its right, past the boy, and then drifted back into its original lane. Another truck, a big Peterbilt, was coming up behind me. I saw his headlights in my mirror. He moved into the lane to my right, past me, and then, as it drew level with the boy, it gave him a wide, respectful berth. I was getting closer now. I could see details. The boy was wearing a simple dark jacket. The tricycle was old, a little rusty. He kept his head down, focused on his task. The world roared around him, but he was in his own bubble of silence. It felt wrong. Deeply, fundamentally wrong. My trucker brain was screaming, but another older part of my brain was screaming louder. Don't, just drive. I took my hand off the horn cord. My knuckles were white. Following the unspoken rule, I eased my rig into the next lane over. For a few seconds, I was right alongside him. He never looked up. I pressed the accelerator and left him behind. I drove for another 10 miles before my hands stopped shaking enough to grab the CB Mic, a northbound 294. Any drivers see that kid on the bike back there? The radio crackled. A single, weary voice came back. Don't talk about it, driver. Just keep your eyes on the road ahead. Seeing him changed things. The story was no longer a story. It was a memory. It started to gnaw at me. Who was he? A hallucination shared by a fraternity of overtired drivers. I couldn't accept that. What I saw was solid. So I started digging. Every time I had a layover with a decent Wi-Fi connection, I'd be in my cab with my laptop, falling down a rabbit hole. I searched for everything. Child killed on I-94, boy on tricycle, Chicago highway, unsolved traffic fatalities, Cook County. I found dozens of tragic stories, but nothing matched. No story of a little boy on a red tricycle. If he was a ghost, you'd think there'd be an echo, a news clipping. But there was nothing. I started talking about it more cautiously with other drivers I trusted. The younger guys had never heard of it. They'd laugh it off. But the older drivers, their eyes would get a little distant. A driver named Sal told me he'd seen him once in the 90s. Scared the hell out of me, he told me. But the guy in front of me, he moved over too. We never said a word on the CB. We just knew. Another driver, a woman named Darlene, told me her father, also a trucker, had warned her about the Centerline boy. He told her it was a test of a professional driver. A pro doesn't panic, a pro doesn't get angry. A pro assesses the situation and acts accordingly. And in this situation, the only action is to give the road to the one who needs it more. This idea of it being a test started to make a weird kind of sense. But it didn't explain the what. It didn't explain the physical presence of a child on a toy in a place where death travels at 80 miles an hour. My obsession grew. I started taking roads specifically routed through the Chicago area. I'd time my run so I'd hit that stretch of I-94 after midnight. My logbook started looking a little creative. My wife started asking why I was so tired. How could I explain I was hunting a ghost that might not even be a ghost? I drove that road maybe 5 or 6 more times. I never saw him. I started to wonder if I really had just been tired that one night. I was beginning to let it go. And that's when I saw him the second time. And that's when I made the mistake Pops warned me about. It was a cold night in October. I was hauling a heavy load of steel beams. I was tired, irritable, and behind schedule. A traffic jam had cost me 3 hours. I was in that foul, impatient mood that Pops had described. I saw him from a long way off this time. A tiny, moving speck. It was him. No doubt about it. The same slow pedaling. The same position, dead on the center line. The traffic was a little thicker tonight. Cars and trucks were performing that same, strange ballet around him. And it made me angry. It was insane. We were all indulging this mass hallucination. Someone was going to get killed. Pop's warning was a faint whisper, but my anger was a roar. This is my road, I thought. My rig weighs 80,000 pounds. I'm not moving for a ghost. I thought of him as a hazard. You warned them? This time, I didn't hesitate. I reached up, grabbed the cold metal cord, and I pulled. The sound of the air horn ripped through the night. It wasn't a friendly tap. It was a long, sustained blast of pure, compressed air fury, a sound that screamed, "Get out of the way." And just like Pop said he would, the boy stopped pedaling. The tricycle coasted for a few feet, and then came to a halt, perfectly balanced on the white line. For a moment, everything was still. I kept the horn blaring, my foot still heavy on the accelerator, closing the distance between us. Then very slowly, he turned his head. He didn't turn his body, just his head, a slow, deliberate motion. I was expecting to see the face of a child, but there was no face. Where his face should have been, there was only light. It wasn't a flashlight. It wasn't a reflection. It was a light that seemed to come from within him, a single, perfectly round, blindingly brilliant beam. It was the color of a welder's arc, a pure, surgical white that had no warmth, no source. It was brighter than a high-beam headlight, brighter than the sun. It hit my windshield and filled the cab. It seared my retinas. I threw a hand up to shield my eyes, but it was useless. All I could see was white. Pure, absolute, disorienting white. My senses screamed. I was completely blind. I was driving a 40-ton missile down a highway at 65 miles an hour and I couldn't see a thing. Panic took over. I jerked the wheel, not knowing which way I was turning. I heard my tires scream. The immense weight of the steel in my trailer shifted, a terrifying groan of metal, and I felt the back end of my rig start to swing out. A jackknife. The ultimate nightmare. I fought the wheel, my heart trying to hammer its way out of my chest. The blinding white light was gone as quickly as it had appeared, leaving dancing green and purple spots in my vision. I could see the road again, just in time to see I was halfway into the next lane, a sleepy four-wheeler right where I was about to be. I yanked the wheel back the other way, overcorrecting. The trailer swayed violently, but by some miracle, it settled back in line behind me. I stomped on the brakes, the whole rig shuddering. I finally brought it to a stop on the shoulder, the engine roaring, the air brakes hissing in the sudden, deafening silence. I looked in my mirror. The road behind me was empty. The boy, the tricycle, they were just gone. I sat there on the shoulder for I don't know how long, shaking. Not just a little tremble, but a deep, bone-rattling shake I couldn't control. My shirt was soaked with cold sweat. The smell of burnt rubber and my own fear filled the cab. When I could finally move, I killed the engine and just sat in the silence. I finally understood what Pops meant. It wasn't a test of patience. It was a test of belief. It was a question asked by the road itself. Do you accept the things you cannot understand, or do you challenge them? I challenged them, and I almost paid the ultimate price. I've thought about that night 1,000 times. I've replayed that blinding light in my mind until the memory itself feels burned into my brain. And I've come to a conclusion. I don't think he's a ghost, not in the traditional sense. A ghost is an echo of a person. The boy on the tricycle. He's an echo of something else. He is the personification of a single, bad moment. Every driver knows that moment. You're tired. You look down at your phone for a second too long. You're blinded by some idiot who won't dim his high beams. You fail to see the stalled car, the deer, the debris in the road. And in that split second, your world becomes nothing but a sudden, blinding light, the headlights of the car you're about to hit head-on, the explosion of your own airbags, the final light. The boy is that moment, given form. He's a quiet, slow-moving hazard that you can easily avoid if you're paying attention, if you show a little respect for the road. He's the embodiment of every potential tragedy that lurks in the darkness. When you drive past him, when you give him his space, you are acknowledging the danger. You are showing the road the respect it demands. You are saying, I see you. I know you're there. And the road lets you pass. But when you honk the horn, you are doing something different. You are challenging it. You are telling that potential tragedy, I am bigger than you. I am louder than you. Get out of my way. And for a split second, the hazard turns to look at you. It lets you see its true face. And its face is the blinding, all-consuming light of the end. It's not a ghost trying to scare you. It's a living symbol showing you exactly what you're gambling with. It's showing you the crash. I still drive. It's the only thing I know how to do. But I'm a different man now. I'm more cautious. I see the darkness between the headlights differently. And I never, ever drive I-294 at night if I can help it. So if you're ever out there, late at night, on a lonely stretch of highway outside Chicago, and you see something that shouldn't be there, something small and slow moving right down the center line, don't be a hero. Don't be a skeptic. Don't reach for that horn. Take your foot off the accelerator. Take a deep breath. Move over one lane. And just keep driving.